Welcome to the fifth episode of The Roadblock, the women's path to the Final Four. Zach Davis alongside Ikey Collier. Welcome. Lots to talk about this week. Texas fell their first game in South Bend to Notre Dame. Then they bounced back. They've won the past two games. Ikey, let's just start with your general takeaways, what you saw, what you liked, what you didn't like from the Notre Dame game.
I like the way this Texas team competed. It's their first really big time game, going on the road, playing in South Bend. Um, they were on the ropes. Notre Dame had Texas on the ropes for pretty much the entire second half. Texas had to outscore Notre Dame 20 to 14 in the fourth quarter to send it to overtime. But it was just nice seeing them play a real big time opponent. Even though they lost, it's really a preview of what it's going to be like in SEC play. Madison Booker, she balled out. She kind of carried this Texas offense. She was kind of the rock of it, I'd say. But yeah, that was my overall thought. It was a really tight game. Texas was lucky to send that to overtime. The foul getting called on Roy Harmon with 2 seconds left. Hey, she knocked down her free throws and Notre Dame just hit a few threes in overtime, and Texas just couldn't buy a bucket, and they ended up losing. But it's good seeing a marquee matchup in the regular season. But what about you? What are some of your key takeaways from that game?
Yeah, well, first of all, I loved the crowd that was there. It was great to see the girls play on ESPN, first of all. Second of all, the head coach for Notre Dame was for football was over there. Like it was a packed crowd. They really showed up. So that was cool to see. And it was cool to play in that atmosphere, or to see them play in that atmosphere. Look, this Texas team hasn't played a lot of competitive basketball this year, and we saw that. West Virginia was a little shaky. They almost blew a 10-point lead with a minute and a half left. And then against Notre Dame, they were neck and neck against a match against an opponent that's very equal to them. They have a phenomenal sophomore in Hannah Hidalgo, and they have a player who's also coming off injury, just like Roy. So it was a very similar team that Texas had. I thought Texas was a little deeper. They just didn't use those players because, you need your best five out there in games like those. But, it's hard to that's a hard game to win. And the fact that they made it to overtime against a Notre Dame team that's probably going to win the ACC, um just set to be in the Elite Eight, the Final Four, just like this Texas Longhorn squad is. Hard game to win. They forced it in overtime. It's pretty alarming to me that Texas only scored 2 points in 5 minutes of overtime. Losing by 10 points in a extra time game is a little alarming, but that like I said, this team isn't experienced with these competitive games. So even though Texas lost, I think it's really helpful for when the SEC play comes around and for when the games are more competitive, when you're playing South Carolina twice, when you're playing LSU, when you're playing Tennessee, when you're playing Oklahoma twice. Those are very competitive games. You're playing every Thursday and Saturday. That is a lot of basketball. That's not as much rest as you think. As far as like these girls need to go to school too and do work. It's very underrated how much basketball these girls are playing with no break. So games like these are very big difference makers. Now coach can understand what players he needs on the floor in the tight games, what players that should probably be out and maybe be more focused in the middle parts of the game. But those are my takeaways with it. It was a fun game to watch. Notre Dame, I think, is really good at basketball. They took a tough loss before Texas. I think having two losses, playing a team that's on back-to-back losses, that's also a top 10 team in the country, you're set up for failure. Am I wrong? Like that's not going
Right.
your way.
Yeah, we talked about this in episode 4 of our podcast that maybe the fact that Notre Dame was coming off a couple losses to really tough teams and they had experienced playing in those close games late, that maybe that's kind of what gave them the edge in overtime compared to this really talented Longhorns team, which in previous years Texas has played in really tight games, but they hadn't necessarily played to that magnitude, I'd say, yet this season. Outside of the close West Virginia game, just an interesting stat. Texas actually out-rebounded Notre Dame uh, by 9, 46 to 37. They had 19 offensive rebounds, yet they weren't able to get the job done. They turned the ball over more than Notre Dame, which I think may have been to their downfall. But Hannah Hidalgo, she was as advertised. She was spectacular. Put up like
30 points. I
30
think she had
points.
yeah. I think she had 23 in the first half. I mean, the big part about that game, by the way, was the fact that Notre Dame played zone defense. They played a zone defense against Texas where they practically left Rory Harmon untouched at the perimeter, and it really messed with Rory. Rory hit a couple threes against James Madison, but she was 0 for 4 from beyond the arc in the game against Notre Dame. And I know she's been putting in a lot of work over the offseason, so it's pretty unfortunate that something like that happens to her. But I mean, that's a very psychological thing, like for you to be left open at the 3 point mark in a 2-3 zone, watching the wing as for the two to just be watching the wings and letting Rory come in into contact. I mean, that's very psychological. That's a very tough thing to do. I thought Notre Dame was coached phenomenally. What does Texas do against the zone? I mean, now we're gonna find out. I mean, James Madison tried playing a zone against Texas, and then Texas made, I mean, Jordan Lee had 7 threes by herself or 6 threes by herself. Madison Booker had 20 points. So maybe it's just like playing in front of over 9,100 fans of the team you're going against. That might play a factor in it. But I mean, if Texas, like, I don't know, how do you break the 2-3 zone with this Texas team? Do you try to go big with Taylor and Kyla? Do you go really small, put 5 guards out on the floor and keep them all wide? Who knows? It's challenging. I don't think we've seen a lineup this year with Taylor and Kyla on this field on the court at the same time. So I'm curious if you were to put like Taylor up top on offense by the free throw line and you had Kyla underneath the rim, would that kind of mess everything up? So this is stuff to consider. It's interesting. We've been talking, or Schaefer's been talking about how he wants to go small, play all his guards because he has so much guard depth this year. I mean, it didn't work against the zone. So, I mean, I don't know, Ikey, what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to go small and play all guards, the only thing is if your guards aren't hitting their shots and you're not getting as many rebounds in the paint, that could cause some issues. Maybe Harmon against Notre Dame, maybe you just chalk it up as an off game for her. I mean, she scored single digits, but she had a clutch shot to tie it with about 5 seconds left, and then she made both free throws at the free throw line to send it to overtime. But I mean, it could be as simple as bad games happen. You're not going to have an amazing game in every single big time uh, game. I'm better for that to happen against Notre Dame than say in the NCAA tournament or later on in SEC play. And I mean, just looking at their SEC schedule, first of all, SEC teams in the top 25, there's 7 right now. And then Vanderbilt and Alabama who were ranked earlier. They dropped out of the top 25. Um, there's going to be more games like this. Around half of their last 17 games of the season, they're all against ranked SEC opponents. I mean, you mentioned it. Playing South Carolina twice. They get LSU at home, who's ranked number 4 right now. And, that OU game, January 2nd at Oklahoma. Oklahoma's cracked the top 10 now, too. They've had a real strong start. That's going to kind of be huge for this Texas team.
Yeah, I mean, it's loaded, and these games matter so much. I mean, I asked Vic myself, like, how important are these games to you? Like, getting these very competitive games, how do they get you ready for the SEC? And Vic was like, they're everything. I mean, without these, how can I know what to do in the games without these? And it's non-conference, and you're figuring things out. Going 8 for 24 from three and still sending the game into overtime. That's a big thing. Turning the ball over 23 times to Notre Dame 17 and still losing in overtime, that's a good thing to take away. So there's a lot of good things to take away. Yes, Freud didn't hit her shots, but Madison looked great. Shea looked really, really good. I mean, I think she had all 4 of her threes in the first half.
Yep.
Um, so it's. I mean, it was a fun game to watch. It was overtime. I was loving it. I mean, that was such a great game to be on ESPN for. It lived up to the expectations. And then I talked to Vic, or I didn't ask this to Vic, but I was listening to a conversation with Vic, and he wants Notre Dame in the Moody Center next year for the ACC SEC Challenge. Um,
I did see
he
that. Yeah,
he
that's.
how cool would that be?
I mean, I think it's only right that Notre Dame return. Well, really, the ACC returns a favor and schedules Notre Dame at UT. But I mean, that'd be awesome. That game would, without a doubt, sell out. I mean. no doubt about it.
I think it's super cool, by the way, that I mean Notre Dame was able to get over 9,100 people in their stadium. I mean Texas, the Moody Center fits 10,000, and I was in there for UConn, and there was probably 7,000 people there. It was not that full, and it was loud. So imagine how hard of a game that must have been to play in South Bend in front of that many people. I know that stadium can get really loud too. So anyway, very interesting game was played last Thursday. Um, Girls look good. I mean, they lost first loss of the year, but no one's going undefeated. I mean, no one's doing what South Carolina did last year.
Yeah.
So a lot to build on, but I think there's a lot of more. I think besides the loss, there's a lot more good things to take away than bad.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of good things, just like I got a couple more tidbits for you about that game. Shout out Taylor Jones. Taylor Jones scored 15, reached the 1,500 career point mark in that game. So shout out to her. Um, Shay Hawley. We may have already talked about this, or maybe it was before we were airing, but she played in her 148th game, which is a new Texas record for games played in
How
the era.
how awesome for her to. I mean, growing up in Austin, went to Westlake, huge Longhorn fan,
Yep,
and breaks the record for most games played in the program. I mean, very special stuff.
special.
Shay Hawley will go down as one of the goats of Texas women's basketball. I mean, she's been a three Elite Eights, dude. Like she's had a heck of a career. She's improving every year. Her three-point ball looks so good. I mean, she was so good on defense last year, but this year she's really added a three-point shot to her game that I mean she's shooting at better numbers than last year anyway. So I mean I think it's the coolest thing. And then when you talk to her, she's like the most humble, nicest girl you'll ever meet. And she's just a star. And hopefully, I mean, hopefully she gets a chance in the league. I think she's more than capable of it. But
The
props to her.
yeah, props. I was watching the Southern game either yesterday or the day before, but the broadcasters were talking about Shay Hawley, and she blocked a shot and just turned around like it was nothing. Like the announcers were joking that like she was like sorry that she blocked it or something. Like I'm not saying that that's what it was just funny to hear the announcers kind of compare it to that, but it's
That's
like
who
oh,
she
blocked the
is.
shot business as
Yeah.
usual.
No, that's who she is. She's team first. I mean, she puts everyone in front of her. And she's a great leader for this team. I think all success that happens to this squad needs to partially be credited to Shay. I mean, Vic thinks Shay should go into coaching after because she's just like that kind of person. Like she would fit in any locker room. So very interesting stuff. But moving on, Texas bounced back after Notre Dame. They're now 8-1. I think they beat let's see, yeah, they're 9-1. They just beat James Madison by 31 points. James Madison, by the way, is very good. They're probably the best team in their conference and coming off a loss. That's impressive. And then they also just killed Southern University. I'm not going to do the math. I think that's 68 point win, 97-39 points. That's the least points scored on Texas all season. So after the loss, pretty good comeback by the Horns.
Yeah, I mean, it was good to see them respond, like kind of regroup, and two road games in a row. Notre Dame, then going to James Madison. They played Notre Dame on a Thursday, and then James Madison on a Sunday. A lot of traveling. Then they got back at home, but now they're going to Richmond to take on the mighty Richmond Spiders.
What is up with this schedule, by the way? I mean, these away games are just killer. I mean, we're talking about Texas here, and they're going at Richmond, at James Madison, at Notre Dame, all in the span of 10 days. That's that's a crazy schedule.
Well, and not to mention the Gulf Coast Classic that happened in Florida over our Thanksgiving break. That's a lot of travel.
Yeah, I mean, they've had, I mean, six away games out of their past seven. I mean, they've played back to back to back on Friday, Saturday, Sunday of November 29th to December 1st. And then after going wire to wire with West Virginia, they go to South Bend like 3 days later. and they have flight issues and they're coming in late and they don't land till like 3 in the morning and no one's asleep till like 3:30 and they got to get up and then play a top 10 team in the country. And then after that, they come home, they run a practice. Taylor Jones doesn't even play because she hurt her back in the Notre Dame game in the so in the Friday practice she wasn't a participant. And then she comes out against James Madison and puts up like a double double. And then she does the same thing 2 days later against West Virginia, puts up 19 and 11. So, I mean, what a star. But anyway, my point is the schedule is, I mean, this is a tough stretch, but then again, it's good practice for the conference schedule, Ikey, because I mean, that's so many hoops. I mean, you're playing Thursday, Friday, you're playing every week is a Thursday, Saturday game schedule, and then throw in a couple weeks where they have a Monday game too. So some weeks they're playing Thursday, Saturday, Monday, Thursday, Saturday. That's a lot of basketball.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it stretching their SEC schedule right now. They January 12th, they go on the road to play South Carolina, and then 4 days later, they go from South Carolina to take on the Auburn Tigers at Auburn, and then after that, they're going to another ACC team, number seven Maryland, on the road on January 20th. I mean, that's going to be a tough little three-game stretch right there. And then after Maryland, they play two ranked teams. They get Tennessee at home, and then they go on the road to play newly ranked Ole Miss or ranked number 22 Ole Miss. So yeah, I mean, it's a tough stretch early on in the season, but that's not going to change. I mean, it's not. I mean, also teams are going to want Texas to go play them at home. I mean, just for the brand and how Schaefer has turned this program around. So it's tough sledding. True, it's tough sledding, but it creates, I guess, more primetime big games, which puts them in the spotlight, which is good for the program. And it also, I mean, I'd rather have a battle-tested Texas team than one that kind of cakewalks and then boom, uh, it might hit the fan when things go haywire. So that's just my thoughts on it.
No, I think you're right on the money. I mean, this is all. I mean, if you want to win a national championship, you got to be ready for those back for the game off game weekends. I mean, it's a challenge, but I mean, this is what gets you ready. And being in the SEC, the most competitive conference in women's college basketball, I mean, it's only going to set you up for success. This is the path. This podcast is the path to the Final Four in its own name. And what's a better path to the Final Four than getting this kind of workload and schedule? And we'll do the whole SEC preview probably on the Thursday of the Oklahoma game, the first SEC game of the year. But man, I'm excited for South Carolina to be here. You were just mentioning this how Schaefer's turned around this program. I think the combination of Texas moving to the SEC and what Vic Schaefer's been building in the past 5 years, the Moody Center, I think when we get home games, it's gonna blow up. I think it's gonna be packed, loud, an unbelievable atmosphere, and I can't wait for it. I mean, they get LSU at home, Alabama at home, Tech. They're at A&M, so I guess not, but
Tennessee at home, number six,
Tennessee at home.
number 19 Tennessee.
So I mean, yeah, exactly. So I mean, we'll do the whole preview, but I mean, do you agree? Do you think that how packed do you think the Moody Center is capable of getting this year?
I mean, it's really perfect timing. Like you were saying, like perfect timing with the way Schaefer is taking this team deep and the roster that they have, and they're moving to the SEC. I mean, I bet there's gonna be a line out the door, at least for the student section wise, for like the South Carolina game when they come into town, Tennessee. I mean, other big time games, and also just the excitement of playing SEC basketball. That's something new. I mean, instead of playing the Kansas State's, TCU's, Baylor, which by the way are all good teams this year. They get to play South Carolina. They get to play LSU. I mean, there's a different kind of aura around it. I mean, it's going to spike a lot of people's interest because it's something new, and people are going to want to go check that out. And with the way the team's playing right now, that they know that Texas has a damn good chance of winning. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be packed.
Yeah, and I mean, big teams are known for just getting good as the season goes on. I don't think we've ever seen a Vic Schaefer squad start with expectations and finish with below where they started. I mean, this team slowly and slowly gets better all season, and that's why they went to the Elite Eight last year after losing Rory Harmon. So I mean, there's so much to be excited about with this squad. I mean, they took a really, really, really good South Bend Notre Dame squad to overtime in front of a packed house. I mean, this team's I can't even put it into words. I'm just looking forward to it. So those are my closing thoughts. Ikey, anything you'd like to end with before we wrap this podcast up?
Yeah, I mean they lost to Notre Dame, but I mean they would have stole it. It would have been a steal if they ended up winning that basketball game, and they almost pulled it out. They almost did. Just a little fun fact to end this edition of the Roadblock Path to the Final Four. You want to take a guess at how many McDonald's All-Americans are on this roster? The current UT roster?
11?
11? Okay, so not quite. There's six right now by my
Oh,
count.
off.
Carlton and Jordan Lee were in 2024, and then Booker in 23, and then Old Baker in
Yeah,
22,
missed that bad.
Harmon and Moore in 21. So that's one, two, three. That's 4 straight years of McDonald's All-Americans on this roster. That's pretty
And
stout.
there's another one coming in next year with what's her name? Um, it's not I forget her name, but they just got a top five recruit. So sign. So they got another McDonald's All-American coming in too. So that'll do it for episode 5 of the Roadblock, the path to the Final Four. Thank you for joining myself and Ikey today. We'll be back next week. Different locations. I'll be back home, but women's basketball isn't going anywhere. Neither is the Burnt Orange Sports Network. Hope all of you have a wonderful week, weekend. Stay safe, be healthy. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll see you soon.